And we're live. We're live, bro. We are live. Um, news. Let's go to. Should we? Let's do something new today. We're gonna do something new. We're going to actually. We're gonna actually pull up ground news and share the screen with the freaking um ground news. Groundnews.com. Groundnews.com. And do they not have a website? Groundnews.com. Ground.news. That is a genius freaking move. They did that is proper usage of freaking domains. Ground.news. It's just freaking genius. It's just genius. Imagine biz help. Imagine biz dot help. Biz dot help. I like it. I like it if I'm being honest, but I think that's further down when we're a little more grounded, if you may. Once we're a little more grounded. What the? It is your director in here. Okay. Well, I also actually wanted the the chat, so I think we're gonna do Chrome tab window. Uh, what if I do this? Ground news. This show the actual. Nope, not. So we're not. We're going to. Okay, we're gonna share the full screen. I think it's gonna be a little slow to begin with, but I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. Whoa. Okay, and then what we do is go here to ground news and just check the framing. How's the framing? I don't know because I can't see framing. Okay, it shows the chat. This. Alrighty. Let's see home. Trending. Where's the trending? Where's the blind spot? Do. TikTok signs deal to sell US unit to American investor led venture. Let's see some other ones. Mandani appointee resigns after her decade-long anti-Semitic social media post resurfaced. Damn, damn. So a decade long. Good luck watching this fucking stream, yo. It's freaking sensitive ass people. If you're sensitive, then why are you stalking me? Literally, why are you stalking me? If you're sensitive, I'm gonna say objective truth. Not, I'm not gonna tailor to your subjective interpretation of life and tailor to your feelings. I'm gonna say truth as it is, openly, because that's just the only way to do it. What are we gonna look at today? I don't know how to use the site. Okay, there's no clear blind spot. Is this the good stuff? No. Daily local news, latest story. That's what I wanted to see. U.S. Justice Department sues three states, District of Columbia for voter data. Half of $18 billion in federal funds for Minnesota run programs. Half of $18 billion in federal funds for Minnesota run programs may have been defrauded, uh, officials say. U.S. official defends Trump's nuclear test comments by citing mounting risk from other states. Hubble Space Telescope spies dusty debris from two cosmic collisions. Rubio hits two more international criminal court judges with sanctions over Israel persecutions. Wow. Let's look at that one. That's almost right in the center. Literally almost perfectly in the center. Sleepy, 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 sleepy. Let's see. Yo, what's up, guys? Start start typing in the chat, bro. Don't be a ghost. Don't be a stalker. Say something. Um, this is a back and forth. If you're just watching, like literally get out of here. We don't care for the views. We care for the conversations. We need to talk to people, not just have random views. Stop being shy, dude. Tell me tell me if you pooped today. Have you pooped today? Have you gone to the bathroom and taken a freaking shit? Also, you need to take a shit. Damn, his farts stink. Do 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 do. All right, where were we? Rubio hits two more international criminal court judges with sanctions for Israel persecution. On Thursday, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio sanctioned ICC judges Gocha, Lord Kinapets, and Erdinand Basurin Danmin. Are these even real names? Are these real names? Look at this. What is this? What are these names? What are these names, bro? Imposing travel bans and asset freezes. Rubio tied the move to a Monday vote in which judges upheld November 2024 arrest warrants for Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. So if the arrest, that's what kind of boggles my mind, and I'm like, why? So why? Like, what is the purpose? Um, no, let's do. It's getting a little slow. This computer is just freaking lacking. Come on. What's going on with this computer, dude? Not good. Not good at all. Okay. Let's see if it works now. We need to get some. We need whole point of this is to get some objectivity, right? We want to understand both sides of the picture because if we just have one side, we're being fed propaganda at the end of the day. So having both sides of the picture, like, okay, someone wants to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. So, what is the flip side? So, why are they saying no? No, we're not gonna arrest them. I think that's key. I personally believe that's key to understanding um what's happening, right? Let's see. So why I've never used perplexity. I've never used perplexity, but by the looks of it, it's like instead of just a large language model and doing like everything that they possibly can, like GPT or Gemini are doing, looks like it's like mostly focusing on search, like being a search engine. I think that might be their goal. So wait, what was the question? Marco Rubio hits two international. Yeah, let's see. Marco Rubio hits two international moves. Administration judges is in section. Okay, so why? Why is the U.S. government going against? Well, against the arrest warrant for Bibi Netanyahu. The U.S. government is opposing the International Criminal Court arrest warrant. Why is this like that? Oh, like that. And chat, you can move a little further down. The U.S. government is opposing the International Criminal Court arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, mainly because it rejects the court's jurisdiction in this case, wants to shield a close ally, and fears precedents that could later be used against U.S. or allied officials. Okay, let's try to understand that just by that. So, wants to first of all, it rejects the court's jurisdiction, right? So check the court's jurisdiction. What gives the U.S. courts the same logic to persecute Venezuela and others in the Middle East when they don't want that to them as well. How the U.S. justifies it. That's what we wanted to hear. From the US government's perspective, there are two different logics at work. For international courts like the ICC, US officials argue that the US never joined the Rome Statute, so its nationals and close allies like Israel should not be subject to that court's criminal jurisdiction without their consent. Domestic U.S. courts and military justice are said to be willing and able to handle any alleged crimes by U.S. personnel, so outside tribunals are unnecessary or illegitimate, illegitimate, ill, illegitimate, illegitimate, illegitimate. For actions against Venezuela, Iran, and others, the U.S. relies on its own domestic laws, like sanctions, terrorism statutes, foreign corruption laws, drug trafficking laws, universal jurisdiction elements in a few statutes. So basically, its own domestic laws to claim jurisdiction when there is some U.S. nexus, like the dollar, U.S. banks, U.S. persons, or impact on national security. So that's what we've been talking about for the past couple days is that the U.S. is looking to protect its citizens and protect its interest by basically going and invading Venezuela. And invading might not be the political word, the correct word, but it is the objective observation that we understand, right? Why many call this double standards. Critics, 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 not me. I just read what's on here. That's my job. Critics. Critics point out that this distinction is mostly political, not moral. The US cheered ICC arrest warrants for Russian officials over Ukraine. Huh, huh. That's isn't that fucking interesting? The US cheered ICC arrest warrants for Russian officials over Ukraine and even cooperated with the courts, despite Russia also not being a member state. But it denounces the same court when it targets an ally like Israel or the current administration. Um, U.S. policy documents and spe- U.S. policy documents and speeches frequently. U.S. policy documents and speeches frequently invoke a rules-based order. Yet the US shields its own and its allies from external accountability while demanding accountability for adversaries. Is that a strategy? Is that a proper strategy? Um, that's crazy. Kick, I know you can't see what we're looking at, but if you want to look at what we're looking at, you have to go to YouTube. YouTube is the exact same name from the Kick. Literally copy and paste the name, and then you'll go to the live stream, and you'll find that we are sharing the screen, so you can see and read everything that we're reading from Perplexity, sponsored sponsored by Ground News and Perplexity. Perplexity. That's gonna take me a while to say. I couldn't even say what was the word I couldn't even say. I could not even say illegitimate. Illegitimate. No, now it's coming out. Illegitimate. Illegitimate. Great. Let's see. U.S. policy documents and speeches frequently invoke a rules-based order, yet the U.S. shields its own and its allies from external accountability while demanding accountability for adversaries. Because of that pattern, scholars, not me, this is just based on information we are gathering and presenting it in an objective way. So we're showing both sides of the picture, um, not tied to any of these opinions, but just speaking what it has been laid out, right? This is not politically right. This is not framed in the proper language that Trump would like. He would probably call me a horrible reporter and kick me to the curb, but we're reading what we need to read. And if this gets clipped freaking 10 years from now, I don't care. I genuinely don't care. I'm doing my own thing, God willing, and with God's blessing. If it is God's will, what I need to do will happen, no matter what I need to say, no matter how I say it, no matter who I freaking speak to. If it is God's will to allow me on this path, then so be it. Um, because of that pattern, scholars argue that the real underlying rule is power. Let's read that again. Because of the pattern, what is the pattern? We just identify the pattern. The US cheered when the ICC arrest warrant for Russia officials over Ukraine, even though the exact same thing that is happening now. Russia is not a member state, uh, but it denounced completely when it starts to target Israel officials and US governments, right? Which it has done. It, let me break the news to you. It has 100% um the ICC has pointed the finger at Trump, and Trump pretty much said, "Nope, we're gonna start to we're gonna start to put sanctions and fines and do whatever we can to stop you from further investigating or creating actual case." So, because they're building something to release in the 2027 to go after Trump, but he's pumping the brakes from all the way from now. So he's pumping the brakes. He doesn't want him to continue. He doesn't want to go through the just process and prove his innocence. He just wants to stop the process in its tracks. So because of that pattern, scholars argue that the real underlying rule is power. International law is supported when it targets geopolitical opponents and undercut when it reaches US partners or could touch US personnel. That's what we just said. Isn't that what we just said? So, because of that pattern, scholars argue that the real underlying rule is power. International law is supported when it targets geopolitical opponents and undercut when it reaches US partners or could touch US personnel. This selective approach undermines the credibility of this selective approach undermines the credibility of both US human rights rhetoric and the broader project of universal international justice. It completely undermines. It just says, if do whatever benefits us, but as soon as you start to get in the way, then you're not valid anymore. It is the exact same thing that the CDC is doing. So the CDC, what have we learned about the CDC? We've learned that they are, what is it? We've learned that the CDC to is looking to full stop the usage of the hepatitis vaccine for newborns. So, but then the doctors, the insurance companies, and the manufacturers of the actual vaccines are coming out and saying, no, whatever the CDC says is wrong. You continue to give your kids the hepatitis vaccine. You know how crazy that is? When the whole time, whenever you ask a question, you or have a concern, or you want to not give your child a vaccine, all of a sudden is, but the CDC approved it. But the CDC said it's okay. And now that the CDC is saying no, you all of a sudden it's the authority of the CDC is completely disregarded, right? So we completely undermine the CDC when it comes to our own freaking opinions. So the opinions of the manufacturers of the vaccine. So we see a conflict of interest. The insurance people, we see a conflict of interest. The doctors who get a bonus, we see another conflict of interest. So if the CDC says no, then you're going to say yes. But in the past, your one and only response to any concern about the vaccines was just the CDC said it's okay. The CDC approved it. And now all of a sudden you undermine completely the actual process, right? So we've seen a lot of undermining and contradiction, right? First comes the contradiction, then comes the undermining and just disregarding. Contradiction, undermining, and disregarding. This it's a pattern. We have established a pattern. Let's see. Contradiction, undermining, and eventual disregarding. Just like doctors, insurance, and vaccine manufacturers have shown after CDC said no more hep vaccine for newborns. Isn't that crazy though? Isn't that Oh no, they looks like we ran out. We ran out of our free, so let's log in. Hopefully we can log in just like that. Oh, that's bright. Round. Okay, the light turned off, but now we're back. We're back. So where were we? So contradiction, undermining, and eventual disregarding. The pattern. So we identified a pattern. That's what we call a pattern. Contradiction, undermining, and eventual disregard. Right. That's what the U.S. did with the ICC. That's what insurance companies and vaccine manufacturers and doctors are doing with the CDC. So it's just like it's a complete shit show. I see. The pattern mm, the pattern is real in the sense that big institutions often change course and then act like nothing serious happened, even when earlier policies were pushed as unquestionable and scientific. That creates the sense of contradiction, undermining trust, and eventually people just disregarding what they're told. For example, the first we already had the example with the US and the International Criminal Court. Now, the first example was International Criminal Court is going after Israel and Trump, and they said no, full stop, just don't even try it. We don't want to go through the legal process and prove that we're innocent. We just want to stop the whole process right there. But when the ICC was going after Russia officials, the US backed it. It said, yes, do this. You are right. We like this idea. But then the objectivity of the ICC when it comes to the US, because they don't have a conflict of interest, so they just said, yeah, we see what you're doing wrong, and we want to put justice in place. And the US just said no. No, we're not interested. We're not interested in doing that. We don't want that. Um and an example, an internal example is that now the hepatitis B vaccine given at birth is being completely stopped by the CDC, and doctors, insurance companies, and manufacturers of the vaccines are saying, no, don't listen to the CDC. You know what? So it's a pattern of clear, very, very clear disregard for any type of uh, authority that they give these institutions, right? So they first contradict themselves, then they undermine the authority, and then they just completely disregard whatever these authorities need to say. So for decades, U.S. policy was every newborn gets a hepatitis B shot at birth. So every newborn gets a hepatitis B shot at birth. And that recommendation helped drive childhood Hep B from thousands of cases a year to very low numbers. The recent the recent shift is away from a universal birth dose toward individual decision making. When the mother is hepatitis B negative, meaning parents and doctors are supposed to decide case by case rather than just follow a blanket rule. That's how it should have always been. But as soon as you try to opt out and say, you know what, there's actual not any risk. So I would like to opt out. The instant response is, but the CDC approved it. But the CDC said, yes, we have to do this. All kids do this. So you must, no matter what. Let's see. This is the pattern, right? Three steps clearly. Strong, confident messaging. This is the standard of care. It's safety, and everyone should do it. That's the confident message that they started with. Over time, evidence, politics, and leadership changes. Recommendations are quietly revised or reversed, sometimes without clear public admission of we oversold this or we were wrongs on parts of it, right? So, doctors, insurance, and manufacturers continue to operate within financial and legal incentives which can keep old behaviors going and create new ones that don't obviously match the new guidance. And why does that happen? Right there, it says it clearly because of financial and legal incentives. So they're being financially incentivized to keep going. Why? Because it is the manufacturers, the insurance companies, and the doctors who get a bonus. Who did they get the bonus from? From the insurance companies. Because they're in bed with the freaking insurance companies every single time. Buenas, oye, buenas. No sé si seguís aquí after my rant. Te voy a decir buenas aquí en el chat. Ah, right. So from the outside, from the everyday human perspective, that looks like institutions demanding trust when it suits them, and then retreating or rewriting the story later without owning the consequences on people's lives and trust. So, how does this connect with the U.S. government courts, right? The parallel with U.S. foreign policy and international court is a powerful actor came a powerful actor claims special status. Rules don't apply to us in the same way we can't be judged by outside bodies. So, this is literally word for word what they're saying, but they're saying it in a political way, right? They're saying it in a political way that sits right with um, all these institutions. And they're going around language to save themselves in court. It's as simple as that, right? The same reason why the president is not always fully informed. Why? Because of conflict of interest. If then they have to testify in court and they say, "Oh, they told me this information and we continue to do it. That's a conflict of interest, right? It, it messes up with everything. So same thing here. Rules don't apply to us in the same way. We can't be judged by outside bodies, they say. The same actor uses law or science very aggressively when it wants to constrain others, like foreign governments, ordinary patients, or workers. But resist accountability when those same measures and tools point back at it. So, whether it is states versus international courts or health agency, insurance, or pharmaceutical companies versus patients and families, the underlying pattern is selective rule following. Selective rule following. At the end of the day, this is just selective rule following. That selective rule following, that selectively is what breeds the sense of these systems are less about consistent justice or consistent science and more about power, liability, and control. Do you think the US government is searching for consistent justice? This is just the observation, right? This is just the observation that we have. Now, back to Marco Rubio hits two more international criminal courts judges with sanctions because they're going after BB. They're going after BB. And Marco Rubio don't want that. Marco Rubio don't want people go after BB, so he puts bad, bad to the judges looking it up. And now the court is incentivized to be like, yeah, no, we're not going to keep looking in that direction. But if they're true upholders of law and order, they will continue no matter what. They're in, and we're doing the same thing. We're trying to sanction the ICC because the ICC judges are going after Trump. Why are they going after Trump? Just for fun? Just 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 a fun field trip at the ICC. We're gonna choose a random leader to go after. Dee, 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 dee. That one. Just like that. Huh? That's not how the ICC works. The White House said the United States fundamentally rejects the ICC's decision and argued that the court does not have jurisdiction over Israeli officials in this situation. Israel is a central US ally in the Middle East, and Washington routinely backs it diplomatically, militarily, and financially. So it's what we've been saying on the past streams, on the previous episodes. Israel is nothing more than a democratic hub in the Middle East. That's it. But not so democratic, huh? Just a little democratic. Yo, I genuinely don't care what you're saying in the chat. Like, why are you sponsoring your thing? I'm never gonna buy it. I'm never gonna look at it. You just you wasted your copy and paste message on me. I'm sorry. Sorry, but that's the truth. Do, 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 Dora. Do, 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 Dora. Congress has pushed measures to punish or pressure the ICC over the warrants, reflecting strong political support for Israel in U.S. domestic politics. U.S. leaders from both major parties have criticized the warrants, seeing them as an attack on Israel's leadership during wartime rather than a neutral application of international law. I don't I How does that make sense? Doesn't make sense. Fear of precedents and sovereignty issues. The US is not within the party of Rome and has a let's see. Trying to- The US position can be defended more coherently than many talking points suggest, even if someone still disagrees with it. So remember, this is objective news. So if we're wrong about something, if anything, we are looking to be wrong. That is the goal. The goal is to prove or disprove something with objectivity. So looking at both sides and finding what is matching, right? What is the truth between them? The US signed but never ratified, so they signed. So they signed the Rome Statute and later unsigned. When did they later unsign? When it didn't seem fully beneficial to them, probably. The US signed but never ratified the Rome Statute and later unsigned it. So it argues the ICC cannot legitimately exercise authority over US nationals or Israelis as if they had consented. By this logic, saying the ICC has no jurisdiction over us is framed as defending the traditional rule that states cannot be bound to new international obligations without their explicit consent. Um, I don't know if that makes full sense because how can you tell someone, hey, I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up for that. Please, please excuse me out of this accusation. But I guess if we look again, once again, if we look at it objectively, I guess that's what they do with uh, illegal aliens that come into the country, right? They're not held under the same laws that US citizens are held on. Why? Because they haven't signed the full proclamation that they will follow and understand the laws of the US and be a model citizen. They haven't signed that. So they're just roaming free. And then once they're caught, they're not judged under a US court of law, but instead they're just extradited or deported back to where they came from. So to then over there face either the consequences or the non-consequences, which most people do. As soon as they're sent back, they just go outside the airport and then go to their house. It's like nothing happened when you get deported. It's literally like nothing happened. You just get, oh, bye bye, back to your country. So from that standpoint, we can understand what the US is saying. It is not a full, basically speaking in lame um layman terms, the US is not a citizen of these Roman statute where the International Criminal Court is based in. So they're saying, no, we're not part of this Rome statute. We removed our signature. We unsigned. So we're not part of it. So we cannot be held liable by anything that you say. Same thing that an illegal alien in the United States would say is like, no, I'm not a citizen. I can't be tried here. Take me out of here, take me to my country, and they will do whatever they need to do. So what they're saying is the US will do whatever they need to do. The US court, not the outside court. That's understandable. We can agree on that point. We can agree because there's some layer of objectivity, right? US lawmakers have a more specific argument in the Israel Palestine situation that is not just we're not a member, so hands off. That's what they're saying for the so you guys are watching the stream? They're watching the stream live. What was I saying? Completely forgot what I was saying. Damn, we've done an hour already. Wow. Okay, that's crazy. We did an hour. That was a whole hour. So the US, when the ICC is going after Trump, they're saying we're not a member, so hands off. Um, but for the Israel lobby and um, the Zionist government, they argue that the ICC jurisdiction over crimes in a given place is derivative of the criminal jurisdiction that the territorial state itself has. The state delegates to the court what it could lawfully do on its own. So yeah, so what we just talked about. It's basically the same thing we just talked about. So so Israel says they're acting in defense and they have a purpose. So whatever Netanyahu does, it's okay, basically. So that state will delegate and do what it needs to do based on their own rules. And if their rules align with the ICC rules, then they have a case. But if the own countries or states says this is fine to do, then the ICC can't do nothing. In their reading, the Palestinian Authority has never had sovereign criminal jurisdiction over Israeli nationals. So it could not delegate that jurisdiction to the ICC. On that logic, the problem is not scrutiny of Israel as such, but the legal route used, a body that, in their view, had jurisdiction, had never had jurisdiction over Israelis, tried to outsource the non existent power to the ICC. So, from this perspective, opposing the specific ICC warrants while still persecuting others domestically or supporting tribunals created with clear state consent can be defended as protecting a particular model or international law, one that prioritizes state consent, territorial limits, and complementary rather than giving a permanent global court open-ended authority. Okay, fair, fair. That's fair. See, we didn't have, so we didn't have that information before, right? So we understood that the government was just going after people just out of the blue, right? Now we have an objective understanding. We have an objective understanding. We know that the ICC is limited, limited, and it cannot go over the sovereignty of these countries. That's pretty much it, right? So in that case, are we wrong or are we right? I wouldn't be able to tell you. I think it's both have their arguments, right? The ICC clearly found that Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump have violated some type of law, but by pure political and technical measures, the ICC cannot inflict law and order on a sovereign territory, right? That's pretty much, if we put it plainly, that is it. That's it. So it's not about right or wrong, like they did this, they didn't do this. It's simply about just technicals, technicals, technical details. Let's keep looking. The move drew international criticism from the Netherlands, which condemned the sanctions and urged court independence, while the ICC deplored another round of measures this year, aligning the United States with Russia's recent punitive steps. That's big. But like it just said right here, court independence. You see, so we did that whole research to understand this one word, these three words: urge court independence. So other countries are condemning the move to sanction the ICC simply by the fact that the ICC just doesn't have full independence. And they're urging courts independence. They're looking for the court to have some type of sovereignty and law and order over the world. Interesting. No, we haven't done the question of the day. Not yet. What's the question? We already passed an hour. Oh, that was exhausting. That was, but we figured it out. We figured out the issue and the issue that other countries agree with as well. The court just does not have independence and cannot impose on other countries or territories sovereignty, right? It's as simple as that. And the only reason they're condemning the US for sanctioning is because they're saying, hey, we see what you're doing, we don't like it, we want the court to have more independence. So there's not these legal loopholes, and the court can be more objective, right? More freedom, more able to do whatever they want. It took us an hour to go in both circles, look at both sides of the picture, look at right, look at wrong, look at the red, look at the blue, and come up with the green in the middle. And that is exactly why today we are sponsored by Ground News. That's their whole objective. They showed you both sides of the picture and what is the middle, right? And then you get to decide instead of being fed propaganda. We did an investigative report today. That was an investigative report. Okay, now we're gonna do the actual news report. How Trump's Venezuela embargo could put Taiwan at risk. Well, yeah, technically, yeah, because um, it's just showing it's showing the these governments showing the Chinese government that, yeah, you know what, you can do this. You can do this. That's fine if you go and arrest another foreign leader and start taking their oil. And it's just setting a bad example. Now, the Chinese government is going to want to do the same thing with Taiwan, right? Which in their hearts, in their mind, and their freaking economic view, they have full right and ownership of Taiwan. So, with even more um, reason, they would want to go and take over Taiwan, right? So it's just setting a bad example. That is just setting a bad example. News report. That's what we're gonna do. News report. News report. Let's use perspective today. American news. Top US and world. Oye, estás aquí en el chat. Oye, ya viene mi cumple. Ah, qué felicidades. Oye, felicidades en tu cumpleañito. Oh, no, estás aquí en la otra cámara. Oye, felicidades en tu cumpleañito. Sí, qué felicidad, qué felicidad. ¿Y qué día es tu cumpleaños? A ver, decime, ¿qué día? ¿En qué día cae tu cumpleaños? Puta. Sí, lo dice, mira. Ahí están los dos, te cuento que están los dos. Mira, 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 mira. Te voy a mostrar ahorita rapidito. Qué bonito ellos dos, los dos se echan. Mira, los dos echaditos, qué bonito, ¿no? Qué bonito. Uy, este, este lunes, el 22. Ah, oye. Yo creí que tu cumpleaños era como en enero o algo. Ah, nada, mentira, mentira, te estoy mintiendo. Estoy mintiendo, oye. Am, como no sé qué Katia te habló. Creo que Katia te dijo algo para. de que íbamos a ir a comer con el Aya y vos vas a un spa. Hay uno, hay uno creo que es en Arlington o en Alexandria, pero qué bonito, parece todo básicamente es un mall, pero de spa. Entonces hay cuartos que vos te entras y ahí está todo listo para vos. No, o sea, no es spa de masaje como donde va tu madre. Es como un spa lleno de cosas, de actividades para que vos vas. King Spa, King Spa. Creo que sí, debe ser eso. Hay, sí, como un lounges, pero son lounges de spa. Yo creo que hay otros más de King Spa que son más bonitos. King Spa, ya yo parece que un tropical smoothie o algo, no sé, así me suena el nombre, como que ya 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 muy popular, muchas personas van ahí con sus pezuñas, ¿no? Ya yo creo que hay otro más bonito que King Spa, pero así, ese estilo, ese estilo es lo que yo hablo, no del specific spa, pero el estilo de spa. Sí, mira qué amables, oye, o sea, qué niños más bonitos están ahí, los hermanitos, son hermanitos muy, muy bonitos. Sí, relajados, mira. La cama de Elijah se la quitaron. Ese es su trampolín de Elijah. Ya no tiene trampolín Elijah, es de ellos ahora. Ok, discúlpame, pero yo voy a hacer mi report porque ya vamos 1 hora. Si quieres podemos hablar después en el live stream. Pero ya pasamos la hora y esto es solo 1 hora aquí. No le voy a dar más a las personas. Con 1 hora es suficiente. El otro día me pasé las 2 horas. Qué huevón que soy hoy. Ah, te vas a ir a cagar o algo. Hasta luego, oye. Anda a cagar tranquila, anda a cagar tranquila. Hasta luego, hasta luego. Nos vemos, oye. Ok, vamos a ver qué vamos a hacer aquí. Top top US and world headlines today. Inflation shows data quirks raise questions. Okay, we might not read the titles, but I would like to move this right here. Whoop. Right there, you can't see. But now it looks like I'm just reading this slide. Puchica. Puchica, oye. Puchica, puchica, puchica. Está bien. Vamos a hacer lo que podemos. Creo que ya está más mejor. No, ahí perfecto. This costs $1 for this stand. You know, the thrift store is underrated, bro. Like this is such a good freaking little stand, and it's so compact. Okay. Top US top US and world headlines today. The latest consumer price index report shows US inflation easing about 2.7% year over year in November. But economists warned data collection problem during the recent government shutdown make the picture less clear for the Federal Reserve's next rate move. President Donald Trump is highlighting falling inflation and rising wages while defending his broader economic agenda ahead of key rate decisions as equity markets react to the latest CPI data and tech-led volatility and led and tech-led volatility. Vol- volatility. I'm just gonna eat it. And tech-led volatility. TikTok has signed an agreement to create a new US based joint venture as part of efforts to comply with a law that would otherwise ban the app in the United States unless it separates from its China based parent company, ByteDance. In world headlines, US announces Venezuelan oil tanker blockade. Washington has moved to block Venezuelan oil tankers by targeting a sanctioned tanker, escalating tensions with Caracas, and adding new flag points to global energy markets. Western officials say Russia is trying to overwhelm Europe with a wave of sabotage and disinformation, with more than 100 incidents documented since the full scale invasion. Western officials say Russia is trying to overwhelm Europe with a wave of sabotage and disinformation, with more than 100 incidents documented since the full scale invasion of Ukraine started, rising concerns about critical infrastructure security. International aid groups are warning that conflicts in Sudan and Gaza rank among the world's most severe humanitarian emergencies, citing displacements, food insecurity, and strained relief operations. That's the news for today. See you tomorrow. Well, well, well. Well, well, well. That was the news for today. And see y'all freaking tomorrow, bro. What do we want to see now? What do we want to see? The markets. I don't want to look at the markets today. We're gonna do an update, and we're gonna do an update, and then we're gonna close this. We have a client that we're working with. He's a contractor for masonry. He does a lot of free masonry. He's a master builder. Um, he understands stone structure architecture very well, and we've built him a website um, and a qualifying quiz. Now the next step is to connect that system to a traffic source, which for us is usually um, Meta ads. Advantage Plus mode that just spreads the ad throughout the whole freaking ecosystem of Meta or Facebook. And after that, we're gonna set up some automations so he gets all the clients directly to his phone with everything he could possibly need um, for a project like client's budget, the type of project that they need, their um, commitment level, the phone number, the address. They get all of that sent directly to their phone. And then all they have to do is just choose and pick which jobs they want to do an estimate and complete the actual project. It's a simple process. We offer this 100% free. If you want to go to free.imaginebizhelp.com and you want to actually start on your own, we have everything outlined exactly for you. We have a free revenue calculator quiz. We have a free um, full business audit and evaluation. We have a free short video course. We have free tools and resources as downloadable PDFs with no paywall, no, we don't ask you for any information. You can instantly download it as soon as you go to free.imaginebizhelp.com. It is the exact same system that we use for our clients that you can implement 100% on your own. And if you don't want to do that and you want us to handle everything, we can start right away implementing our system, and we start 100% free until you get your first client. Then we switch to a flat monthly fee. All of this can be found at free.imaginebizhelp.com. And if you want the done for you program where we handle everything for you and you just get text from qualified, confirmed, and high interest clients. So you don't get tire kickers or people just asking for price or just random curious Georges. Um, we filter everything and you only get highly interested clients ready to pay for your service. If that's what you're looking for, you can go to imaginebizhelp.com. And if you want all the free tools so you can do it all yourself, free.imaginebizhelp.com. Thank you. That's it for today. Glory to God. Lord have mercy on me. And God willing, this goes great.